I'd stopped celebrating Christmas after Thomas died. No point in hanging stockings for ghosts or cooking feasts for memories. This Christmas Eve was like the 9 before it's silent. Simple. Survivable. I told myself I preferred it this way. The lie came easier each year. The cabin was quiet except for wind rattling the shutters. Snow had been falling since noon, covering everything in that peculiar hush that only winter brings. I'd made coffee too strong, too bitter, and set a single plate at the table. 1 fork, 1 cup. One woman who'd learned to stop expecting anything more. 52 years old, and I'd become someone who talked to herself. Not aloud. That would be madness. But in my head, constant conversation. Maybe that was madness too. I'd stopped marking time by holidays years ago. Started marking it by seasons instead. Winter wheat, spring planting, summer harvest, autumn preservation. Thomas died in autumn. I'd survived 10 of them since. 10 years of proving I could manage alone. 10 years of convincing myself that managing was the same as living. The silence used to hurt. Used to press against my ears until I wanted to scream just to break it. Now, it was just silence. I wasn't sure which was worse, the pain or the numbness that replaced it. I lit a single candle out of habit more than hope. The flame flickered in the draft from the window, casting shadows that moved like memories across the walls. I used to hang evergreen boughs, used to bake sweet bread, used to fill this cabin with warmth and laughter and the smell of cinnamon. Now, I filled it with nothing. Emptiness takes up less space than grief. The coffee scalded my tongue. I'd forgotten how to make it properly. Forgotten sugar existed. Forgotten sweetness was possible. I washed the single plate and set it back on the shelf. Noticed the dust on the unused dishes. When had I stopped seeing it? When had I stopped caring about things that didn't serve immediate survival? I'd become efficient, practical, small, a woman who fit neatly into the edges of her own life. 3 days since I'd spoken aloud. I tested my voice. It's Christmas Eve. The words sounded strange, foreign, like they belonged to someone else. Outside. The snow kept falling. Inside. The silence kept growing. I should have gone to bed. Should have let this day end like all the others. But something kept me at the table, watching the candle burn down, waiting for nothing in particular. That's when the knock came. I froze. No one visited on Christmas Eve. No one visited at all. Really, not anymore. People had learned I preferred solitude. Or I'd taught them to think I did. The knock came again. Softer. Almost apologetic. I opened the door to find no one there. Just wind and snow and darkness. Then I looked down. A letter, tucked against the doorframe where the wind couldn't catch it. I knew the handwriting before I picked it up. James Whitmore, my husband's best friend. The man who fixed my fence every spring and disappeared every summer. The man who kept a respectful distance that felt like kindness or pity or something I'd never quite named. I should have known better than to open it. Should have known my careful peace was too fragile to last. I held the envelope up to the candlelight. My name in his steady hand. Margaret Hayes. Not Mrs. Thomas Hayes. Just Margaret. When had he started thinking of me that way? My hands shook as I broke the seal. That should have been my first warning. I hadn't shaken in years. Had trained myself into steadiness through sheer force of will. The letter started simply, Margaret, I've loved you for 30 years. I had to sit down. Had to read it again because surely I'd misunderstood. But the words stayed the same. Present tense, active, ongoing. Your husband knew before he died. He made me promise to wait 10 years before telling you. That decade is over. May I please tell you why? The paper trembled in my grip. 30 years. I did the mathematics like a schoolgirl. I was 22 when we met. 52 now. He'd loved me through my engagement, my wedding, my entire marriage, my widowhood, through everything. While I'd loved someone else, Thomas knew. That was the part that made my chest tight. Thomas knew and said nothing. Let me marry him knowing his best friend loved me. Let me mourn him knowing James was waiting. How long had they planned this? How long had I been part of a story I didn't know I was in? I read the letter a third time. Slower, looking for anger or betrayal or manipulation, finding only honesty. James laying his heart bare after 3 decades of silence. I never interfered. He wrote, never acted on it. I loved you both too much. But Thomas made me promise to tell you after 10 years. He said you needed to know your own strength first, that you needed to learn you could survive alone before you chose not to. I thought of all the times James had been there. The fixed fence I'd never asked him to fix. The chopped wood that appeared on difficult mornings. The way he'd check on the cattle and disappear before I could thank him. The way he never quite met my eyes. I'd called it friendship, duty to Thomas's memory, neighborly kindness. Had it been love all along? The letter ended with a question. May I come? Explain in person? No. Expectations? No pressure. I just need you to understand why I waited. Why I'm speaking now. You can refuse me after I'll accept that. But please let me tell you the whole truth. I sat at that table until the candle burned to nothing. Read that letter until I had it memorized. Every word, every careful phrase, every piece of a story I'd been living without knowing it. The letter said Thomas made him promise to wait 10 years. 10 years so I could learn my own strength. I wanted to be angry, wanted to feel manipulated, wanted to rage at both of them for deciding my timeline without asking. Instead, I felt seen. Seen in a way I hadn't been in a decade, maybe longer. I told myself I'd refuse him. Tell him no? Absolutely not. 10 years or 30 years made no difference. I was done with love. Done with risk. Done with anything that could break me the way losing Thomas had broken me. But my hands kept touching the paper, tracing the words, and I couldn't bring myself to burn it. I sent a terse note 2 days after Christmas. You may explain. Once, Tuesday afternoon. I spent those 2 days preparing what I'd say, how I'd refuse gracefully but firmly, how I'd thank him for his honesty and send him away with my dignity intact. I scrubbed floors that were already clean, polished windows that already gleamed, kept my hands busy so my mind couldn't wander to places I'd forbidden it to go. Tuesday came too fast and too slow. He arrived exactly on time. I watched from the window as he dismounted, tied his horse, approached the door. Older now. Gray in his hair that had been dark when we met. Lines around his eyes from squinting at the sun. But familiar. Too familiar. I opened the door before he could knock. Margaret. My name in his voice. Not Mrs. Hayes. Not ma'am. Just Margaret. James. I stepped back to let him in. Coffee. Please. My hands shook, pouring it. I'd made it that morning. Let it grow bitter on the stove. Seemed appropriate somehow. I set out 2 cups, a symbolic moment I couldn't take back. The second cup I hadn't used in 10 years. We sat across from each other at the table. The same table where I'd eaten alone for a decade. Having him there felt intimate in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. Thank you for seeing me, he said. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. "I'll start at the beginning," he said. "If that's all right, please." The word came out quieter than I'd intended. He told me everything. How he'd loved me from the first meeting at the church social. How Thomas had courted me first, boldly, the way James couldn't. How he'd stepped aside because he loved Thomas like a brother and wouldn't come between us. "I watched your marriage," he said. "Watched you be happy. That was enough for a long time. Seeing you happy was enough." His hands wrapped around the coffee cup. I noticed them work-roughened, scarred, steady. So different from Thomas's hands. Or maybe I'd just forgotten what Thomas's hands looked like. The guilt of that realization made my chest ache. "After Thomas died," James continued, "I wanted to help, wanted to take care of you, but I knew you needed time, needed space to grieve properly." 10 years is a lot of space," I said. My voice sounded strange, like I hadn't used it in days. I hadn't. Thomas asked for 10 years specifically. James reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper worn soft with handling. He wrote me a letter. Before he died, "I've kept it all this time." He slid it across the table. I stared at it like it might bite. "Read it," he said gently. "Please." I opened the letter with shaking hands. Thomas's handwriting. Achingly familiar. The last piece of him I'd see. "James," it started, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. And Margaret needs you now. But not yet. Give her 10 years. Let her learn she can survive alone. Let her build her own strength. Then, and only then, tell her how you feel. She deserves to choose from strength, not need. She deserves to know she can survive alone before she chooses not to. I trust you with my life's greatest treasure. Don't let me down." The tears came before I could stop them. Silent. Burning. Unstoppable. All the grief I'd held for 10 years came flooding up my throat. "Margaret, he knew." I whispered, "All those years, he knew. He did. And he wanted this. He wanted you to be happy." James said, "However that looked, whoever that was with." I couldn't look at him. Couldn't breathe past the tightness in my chest. "I'm not asking you to need me." "Margaret," James said quietly, "I'm asking if you might want me. There's a difference. You've proven you can survive alone. You're strong and capable and whole. But if you'd like company on the journey, I'd like to be that company. I need time. I managed. Take all you need. I might say no. I'll accept that. I might not know what I want. Then we'll figure it out together. Or not. Whatever you choose." He stood to leave. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt the cabin grow colder with his departure. After he left, I sat in the chair where he'd sat. It was still warm. I could smell his soap cedar and something else. Familiar. I'd spent 10 years convincing myself I was whole alone. One conversation, and I felt the lie of it. Days became weeks. Winter deepened. James didn't press for an answer. Instead, he just appeared. Monday mornings, I'd hear the axe splitting wood I hadn't asked him to split. Thursday afternoons brought the sound of hammer on barn repairs I'd been ignoring for years. Saturday evenings, he'd check the fence line and disappear before dark. I watched from the window. Told myself I was just supervising. Lies came easier in winter, everything buried under snow. He worked efficiently. No wasted movement. The steady rhythm of his axe reminded me of heartbeats. I caught myself timing my breathing to it. Caught myself waiting for Mondays. Mid-February brought bitter cold. The kind that turned breath to ice and made every step outside an act of courage. James appeared as usual, working in temperatures that should have kept any sensible person indoors. I watched him stack wood for an hour before I opened the door. "Coffee," I called out. "Before you freeze to death on my property?" His surprise was worth the risk. Worth the way my heart hammered as I said it. He stamped snow off his boots and came inside. I'd set out 2 cups that morning without consciously deciding to. Old habits forming or new ones beginning. I wasn't sure which. "Thank you," he said. I nodded. Poured coffee that was actually drinkable today. I'd remembered sugar, had even used some. We drank in silence. Not uncomfortable silence. Something else. Something I didn't have a name for. "You've kept the cattle well," I said finally. 3 years now. He said, "I didn't realize you were managing the herd. You never asked?" He was right. I'd stopped asking questions that might have answers. Stopped asking for anything at all. "The fence on the north pasture is holding," he continued, "but the south gate needs replacing come spring." I know you can," he interrupted gently. "Question is whether you want to, or whether you'd like help." I studied him over the rim of my cup. Really looked at him for the first time in years. His hands wrapped around the coffee. His shoulders broad under worn flannel. The way he looked at me like I mattered. "I'd like help." I heard myself say. Something shifted in his expression. Not triumph. Relief, maybe. "Then I'll help." He stayed for a second cup. We talked about nothing important. Weather. Cattle. The Hendersons' new barn. Normal things. Easy things. But underneath ran a current I could feel humming through every word. When he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. "Thank you," I said. "For the wood, for the fence, for everything. You're welcome, Margaret." My name again. The way he said it made me feel like a person instead of a widow. After he left, I noticed I was humming. Couldn't remember the last time I'd hummed. Couldn't remember the last time I'd wanted to. I caught myself braiding my hair differently the next Monday. Caught myself checking the mirror. Caught myself counting hours until I'd hear the axe. 52 years old, and I was courting. Or being courted, or both. I was terrified of how much I wanted it. At the general store, Mrs. Henderson watched me pick out flour with calculating eyes. "Awful lot of time James Whitmore spends at your place," she observed. "He's helping with the ranch," I said evenly. I'm sure that's all it is." I'd heard that tone before, after Thomas died. They'd pitied me. Called me poor Margaret until I wanted to scream. Now they had new names brewing. I could feel the judgment gathering like storm clouds. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself their opinions didn't matter. I was lying to myself again. Getting good at it. But when James appeared that Thursday, when I heard his horse and felt my heart lift, that wasn't a lie. That was the truest thing I'd felt in 10 years. "I brought seeds," he said, holding out a small packet. "For when you're ready to plant again." I took them. Our fingers brushed. I didn't pull away. "Spring bulbs," he said. "They'll come up in April." April. 3 months away. He was planning 3 months ahead. Planning for me to still be here. Still be wanting this. I planted those seeds in my mind first. Let them take root in the careful soil of my guarded heart. "Thank you," I said. We stood there on my porch with winter wind cutting between us and spring waiting in a paper packet. I was noticing everything about him now. Couldn't stop myself. The way he moved, the sound of his voice, the fact that he never pushed, never demanded, just offered and waited for me to choose. The storm came fast in late February. One minute, James was on my roof fixing a leak. The next, the sky opened black and furious. "You'll stay?" I said. Not a question. Not quite an invitation. A statement of fact that felt like stepping off a cliff. He climbed down, brought his horse to the barn. By the time he came back, snow was falling sideways, and the temperature had dropped 20 degrees. We were trapped together. Properly improper. The kind of situation that would feed gossip for months. I didn't care, or told myself I didn't. I made dinner while he built up the fire. We moved around each other in the small space, careful not to touch, hyper-aware of every near miss. The cabin that had felt too big for one person suddenly felt too small for two. We ate in silence, cleaned up in silence. The storm raged outside. Inside, a different kind of storm was building. "I should sleep in the barn," he said finally. "You'll freeze." It would be proper. And proper never kept anyone warm. He looked at me then. Really looked. I felt naked under that gaze, even though I was fully clothed. "Margaret, there's a bedroll in the corner," I said quickly. "Take it. I'll sleep in my room. We're both adults. We can manage one night." But I wasn't sure I could manage. Wasn't sure my heart could take the proximity without breaking open completely. Hours passed. I lay in my bed listening to the storm, listening to him breathe in the next room, listening to the walls of my careful isolation crack and splinter. Finally, I got up. Found him sitting by the fire, wide awake. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "No." I sat in the other chair. We stared at the flames together. "Did Thomas really know?" I asked. The question I'd been holding since his letter. "Or did you make that up to ease your conscience?" He didn't flinch. "He really knew?" "How long?" "Always. From the beginning. And he married me anyway. He loved you." James said simply, "So did I." The difference was, he courted you first. "Do you resent him for that?" "Never." His voice was firm. "I got to watch you be happy. Got to be part of your life. Even from a distance. That was more than I deserved." "Why now?" I whispered. "Why couldn't you just let me be?" "Because Thomas asked me to tell you. Because 10 years is over. Because I'm tired of loving you in silence." The honesty of it broke something in me. All the grief I'd been holding, not just for Thomas, but for the lonely years, for the woman I'd become, for the fear I'd lived with, came crashing out. I cried. Really cried. First time in front of anyone since Thomas's funeral. James crossed the space between us and held me. Just held me. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't offer false comfort. Just stayed. His arms felt different than Thomas's had. Felt safe in a new way. Not replacement, but something else. Something that didn't erase what came before, but didn't apologize for existing either. "I'm afraid," I said into his shirt. "Not of you, of losing you. I survived losing Thomas. I won't survive losing someone else." "I've waited 30 years," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." I pulled back enough to look at him. His face was close. Close enough to kiss if I wanted to. If I was brave enough, I wasn't. "Not yet. Not yet," I whispered. "But not never." Something in his expression eased, like he'd been holding his breath and could finally exhale. "I can wait," he said. We sat there until the storm passed, talked through the night. I told him stories about Thomas I'd never told anyone. He shared memories too. We laughed, cried, remembered together. When morning came and the storm cleared, everything looked different. Or maybe I did. Spring came reluctantly. So did acceptance. The town had opinions. I heard them everywhere. General store, church steps, post office. Whispers that turned to silence when I appeared. 10 years isn't long enough. Thomas would turn in his grave. At her age, you'd think she'd know better. I'd survived their pity. Now I had to survive their judgment. The first Sunday in March, I attended church social after service. Hadn't missed one in 10 years. Routine was armor. But that day, the armor felt thin. Some women were warm. Sarah Thompson squeezed my hand. Young Emma smiled encouragement, but others kept their distance. Watched me like I'd committed some unspoken sin. Mrs. Henderson Town matriarch, self-appointed keeper of propriety, cornered me by the refreshment table. Margaret, her voice carried. People turned to listen. I must speak plainly. Is it proper Thomas barely cold 10 years, and with his best friend? The room went quiet. Waiting for my response. Waiting to see if I'd crumble. I'd spent 10 years being the perfect widow. Silent. Dignified. Alone. I'd become what they expected grief in human form. I was tired of it. Thomas has been gone a decade. Mrs. Henderson, not sure there's a proper timeline for moving forward. But with James Whitmore, what about him troubles you exactly? That he waited respectfully, that he asked permission, that he honors both me and Thomas's memory. Her mouth opened and closed. My husband's dying wish, I said clearly, was that I live fully. I'm honoring him by honoring that wish, if that troubles you. I suggest you take it up with Thomas. I'm sure he's listening. Silence. Then Sarah laughed. Emma nodded approvingly. The Reverend's wife touched my shoulder as she passed. Not everyone approved. Some never would. But enough smiled. Enough understood. Mrs. Henderson huffed and turned away. I'd made an enemy. I found I could live with that. That evening, James came by. I told him what happened. Town's talking, I said. Let them talk. They're saying things about you, about us. Do you care what they say? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought. Less than I expected. Then that's all that matters. But I saw the hurt in his eyes. Heard what men said to him questioning his friendship with Thomas. His timing. His intentions. Someone had suggested he'd been waiting like a vulture. The ugliness of it made me angry. Made me protective. Maybe we should wait, I said. Let the gossip die down. Is that what you want? He asked. Or what you think you should want? The question cut through everything. I'd been living by should for 10 years. Should mourn longer. Should stay alone. Should care what they think. I don't know what I want anymore. I admitted. Yes, you do. He said gently. You're just afraid to claim it. He was right. I was afraid. Afraid of their judgment. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of being happy when maybe I should still be sad. The next Sunday, I walked into church with James, not hiding, not apologizing. Together, heads turned, whispers rose. Mrs. Henderson's disapproval radiated like heat. I kept my head high. We sat in the pew where Thomas and I used to sit. It felt right somehow, not erasing him, including him. After service, the Reverend shook both our hands. Sarah invited us to dinner. Young Emma asked if I'd teach her to preserve jam like I used to. The town would gossip, or not gossip. Some would accept us, some wouldn't. I discovered I could live with that uncertainty. What I couldn't live with anymore was the certainty of being alone. It hit me on a Tuesday in early April. Nothing special about the day. That's what made it worse. I was watching James mend fence from my window. He moved with easy competence, muscles working under his shirt, completely unaware I was watching. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. My chest went tight. My hands went numb. My vision tunneled until all I could see was him alive, healthy, strong. For now. The thought crashed through me like breaking glass. He was alive now. But for how long? How long until I lost him too? Because everyone I loved, left. That was the pattern, the inevitability. I'd survived losing Thomas. Barely. Had spent 10 years piecing myself back together from the shattered remains of who I'd been. I wouldn't survive it twice. The panic built until I had to grip the windowsill to stay upright. Memories flooded back the telegram. The impossible words. The moment everything stopped making sense. The funeral. The empty house. The years of learning to live with half my heart missing. I couldn't do it again. Couldn't risk that pain again. When James came in for water, I couldn't look at him. Margaret, what's wrong? Nothing. The lie tasted bitter. You're pale. Are you ill? I'm fine. Just tired. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. But he left anyway. Gave me space I wasn't sure I wanted, but definitely needed. That evening, he returned. I'd been crying. My eyes were swollen proof. Talk to me, he said. I can't do this. The words rushed out. I can't. I'm sorry. I thought I could. But I can't. Can't do what us, any of it. My voice broke. I survived losing Thomas. I won't survive losing you. Margaret, no. Listen, I need you to understand. When Thomas died, I became someone different. Someone harder. Someone who could survive alone. I can't go through that again. Can't love someone and lose them, and have to rebuild myself from nothing. So you'd rather be alone forever because you're afraid of losing me someday. Yes. The admission felt like confession and cowardice mixed together. Yes. I'd rather be safe and alone than risk that pain again. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. Is this fear talking, or is this really what you want? I couldn't answer. Didn't know the difference anymore. I'll go, he said, if that's truly what you want. But Margaret, you're not protecting yourself. You're punishing yourself. There's a difference. After he left, I collapsed. Just folded into myself on the floor and let the fear consume me. I'd built walls so high I thought they'd protect me. But walls don't just keep pain out. They keep life out. I'd been half alive for 10 years breathing, functioning, surviving, not living. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was going to destroy the best thing in my life to protect myself from losing it. Hours passed. Night deepened. I paced and cried and raged at the unfairness. Why did I have to lose Thomas? Why did loving again mean risking everything? Why couldn't I just be content? Alone, but Thomas's voice echoed in my memory. Something he'd said years ago. Margaret, you're terrible at being alone. You need people. I'd forgotten that, or tried to. Dawn found me exhausted but clear, sitting at the table with Thomas's letter spread in front of me. She deserves to choose from strength, not need. She deserves to know she can survive alone before she chooses not to. I could survive alone. I'd proven that. 10 years of proof. The question wasn't whether I could survive alone. The question was whether I wanted to. Thomas didn't promise me no pain. He promised me it was worth risking. I'd spent 10 years being brave about being alone. Time to be brave about being together. The fear wouldn't disappear, but I could choose anyway. Courage wasn't absence of fear. It was fear and action together. I didn't plan what I'd say, didn't rehearse. Planning was what careful people did. I'd been careful for 10 years. It hadn't made me happy. I dressed in my good dress, the blue one I hadn't worn since before Thomas died. Drank coffee standing up. Walked out the door before doubt could catch up. The mile to James's ranch felt both endless and too short. My heart hammered, but my hands were steady. First time in weeks my hands were steady. Spring was everywhere. Mud and new grass, birds returning, sun warm on my face. The world looked different when you were walking toward something instead of away from it. I found him in the barn. He was mending tack, focused on his work. Didn't see me at first. I watched him, memorized the sight. This man who'd loved me for 30 years without asking anything in return. This man who'd waited while I learned my own strength. He looked up, saw me, went completely still. Margaret. I crossed the space between us before I could lose my nerve. You asked if you could court me. I said, I never properly answered. He set down the leather, waited. I loved Thomas with everything I had. I continued, that won't change, won't diminish. He'll always be my first love. James nodded, understanding, without needing explanation. I've been afraid. I said. My voice was shaking now, but I pushed through. Not of you. Of losing you. Of being wrong. Of dishonoring Thomas. Of being foolish at 52. You're not. Let me finish. I took a breath. But I'm more afraid of wasting the years I have left being safe instead of being happy. I'm more afraid of dying alone because I was too scared to live. He stepped closer. Close enough to touch if I wanted. If I was brave enough, I was. You asked to court me. I said, I'm asking you to marry me. If you'll have me. His expression went through shock, joy, disbelief in rapid succession. Margaret, is that a yes? I've loved you for 30 years. You're asking if I'll have you. He took my hands. His were shaking too. Both of us trembling with the enormity of this moment. I'll have whatever you're willing to give, he said. Courtship, marriage, forever. I'm asking for forever. I whispered. I'm choosing you. Choosing this. Choosing to risk everything because you're worth the risk. He kissed me then. Tender and careful and full of 30 years of waiting. It felt like coming home. Like waking up. Like spring after 10 years of winter. Not Thomas's kiss that was passion and youth and discovery. This was something else. Something new. Something ours. When we pulled apart, I was crying. So was he. I thought I'd buried my heart. I said, I was wrong. It was only sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake. We could wait. He offered. Court properly. Take time. I've waited long enough. We've both waited long enough. We stood in that barn, holding each other, while morning grew warm around us, making plans. Talking about logistics. When to marry, how to merge the ranches, whether to keep both names. Soon. I decided, let's marry soon. I don't want to waste any more time. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He smiled. The kind of smile that transforms a face, makes someone beautiful, not despite age, but because of it. Then yes, he said, yes to all of it. Yes to you. I'd made a lot of choices in my life. Chose Thomas. Chose to survive his loss. Chose to build walls. Chose to be safe. This was different. This was choosing to live instead of just survive. Choosing vulnerability over safety. Choosing love over fear. At 52, I learned that hearts don't have expiration dates. That second chances don't dishonor first loves. That the bravest thing a woman can do is admit she doesn't want to be brave alone anymore. I chose James. Choose him still. Every day, every morning. And every morning, Thomas's blessing feels new. We married in June with wildflowers in my hair and Thomas's blessing in my heart. The ceremony was small, the Reverend, Sarah and her husband, Emma and a few others, the ones who mattered. Mrs. Henderson didn't attend. Some never would accept us. I'd made my peace with that. The reception was pie and coffee in the church hall. Simple, perfect, exactly what we wanted. James had asked what I wanted to do about names. Keep Hayes. Take Whitmore, hyphenate Whitmore. I said. I was Margaret Hayes. Now I'm Margaret Whitmore. Both true. Both me. We merged the ranches, combined the herds, built a life that honored what came before while embracing what comes next. Now it's late summer, 6 months since the letter that changed everything. 3 months since I walked down the aisle for the second time in my life. Our cabin now holds 2 of everything, 2 coffee cups on the morning table, 2 rocking chairs on the porch, 2 sets of boots by the door. Small changes. Monumental changes. James hung both wedding photos in the parlor. Me with Thomas. Young and uncertain and full of hope. Me with James. Older and wiser and full of different hope. I'd been nervous about it, about having Thomas watching from the wall. But it feels right. He's part of this story. Always will be. I still visit Thomas's grave. Bring flowers every few weeks. Sometimes James comes. Sometimes he doesn't. Understanding without needing words. Thank you, I tell Thomas. Tell the headstone and the memory and the man who loved me enough to let me go. Oh, thank you for knowing what I needed. For trusting James. For believing I deserved more happiness. The wind answers. Or maybe it's just wind. I'm teaching James to bake Thomas's favorite bread. Sweet rolls with cinnamon. The recipe Thomas's mother taught me. Passing on the memory while building new ones. James teaches me things too. How to ride better. I was always nervous on horses. He's patient. Doesn't push. Just encourages until I'm galloping across the north pasture laughing like a girl. We're learning each other's rhythms. The way he hums when he's content. How he reads the same page twice when he's worried. The fact that he takes his coffee black but likes honey in his tea. Small things. Essential things. The town has mostly accepted us. Even Mrs. Henderson nods now instead of glaring. Progress comes slow in small communities, but the young women look at me differently. Like I gave them permission to believe in second chances. Like I proved something they needed to see. Proved. Sarah told me, you showed us it's not over. That life keeps happening, even when you think it's done. I hadn't meant to be inspiring. Had only meant to stop being afraid. Turns out, that's inspiring enough. Some evenings I sit on the porch writing in my journal, recording this story for other widows who think love is over, who believe their hearts are buried with their husbands. If I could tell that lonely widow on Christmas Eve one thing, I'd tell her this. Your heart knows when it's time. Listen to it. And when it's time, choose brave. Choose open. Choose the love that's waited 30 years to find you. I thought I'd buried my heart with Thomas. Turns out, hearts don't bury. They wait. They heal. They're ready when you are. Mine was ready. Finally, beautifully, terrifyingly ready. At 52. I learned that second chances don't dishonor first loves. They honor the person who believed you deserved them. Thomas gave me 2 gifts, 20 beautiful years as his wife, and permission to have more beautiful years after. I'm unwrapping that second gift now. Every day. Every morning, I wake next to James. Every evening, we watch the sunset together. People ask if I feel guilty, if I think Thomas would approve. I tell them Thomas orchestrated this, made James wait 10 years so I'd know I could survive alone before I chose not to. He gave me independence and then gave me a choice. That's love. Real love. Not possession, but freedom. I chose James. Choose him still. Every morning. And every morning. Thomas's blessing feels new. This evening. James and I sit in our rocking chairs watching the sun set gold and pink over the prairie. His hand finds mine in the space between chairs. Our fingers lace together naturally now. Habit and choice both. Happy. He asks. I consider the question, really consider it, yes, and grateful. And still a little scared, but mostly happy. The fear ever go away? No. But I'm learning to live with it. Learning that love and fear can coexist. That being afraid doesn't mean being wrong. He squeezes my hand. Understanding in the pressure. I learned something these past months. Hearts don't have expiration dates. Love doesn't either. You can love someone who's gone and someone who's here. You can honor the past and embrace the future. You can be 52 and still discovering who you are. The bravest thing I've ever done wasn't surviving widowhood. It was choosing to not be a widow anymore. There's a difference. The sun sinks lower. Our rocking chairs keep rhythm. Somewhere, a meadowlark sings. I spent so long protecting my heart, I'd forgotten hearts were meant to be used. Now I'm using mine. Fully. Completely. Without reservation. And it turns out, Thomas was right all along. I'm terrible at being alone. But I'm quite good at being loved.